trabajando y fortaleciendo toda la agenda de cuidados paliativos en México. Vamos a empezar con nuestro amigo Sir Thomas Hughes-Hallett, que nos va a presentar las experiencias también del Reino Unido. Presento a Sir Thomas, que es una autoridad en el tema de cuidados paliativos, como director del Instituto Imperial para la Innovación Mundial de la Salud. Bienvenido, Sir Thomas.
Good morning, and thank you so much for allowing me to come join you here today in Mexico City. This is my second visit to your country, and last time I was here, I experienced Mexican healthcare at first hand. I was running down a beach after my daughter, who was working here in Mexico, when my Achilles tendon snapped. I'm delighted to say that we were a very long way away from the main hospital. So I ended up in a maternity unit with 3 beds, and I experienced, instead of a general anaesthetic, which was not available, I had an epidural, which was the only anaesthesia available. So to all women in the audience who have not yet had a baby, I strongly recommend the use of epidural injections. It was one of the nicest experiences of my life. So, anyway, I'm Thomas Hughes-Hallett. I had the privilege of running for 12 years what I believe is probably the finest palliative care organisation in the world, named after my heroine, Marie Curie. It is called Marie Curie Cancer Care, and every year it treats 45,000 people. Sadly, every year we treat a new 45,000 people, because the one inescapable fact about life is that we will all die. In 1981, my daughter, my first child, died. And I was there when she died. I had never seen a dead body before. Not many of us probably have. My wife and I were young, we were 25, and Emily was our first precious child. Emily left me a wonderful legacy, because the experience of her death was utterly ghastly. We were rushed by ambulance into St Thomas's Hospital in London, and it was late at night. I had found her. She seemed to be just alive still, but it was very unexpected. At 2 in the morning, after our daughter had died, we had not been invited to see her body. I left the hospital. No one left with us, just my wife and I. It was raining very hard outside. I had no money with me. When your daughter is dying, you don't think to take your wallet with you. So we had to hitch a lift back to our house, about 2 miles away from the hospital. The other thing you don't always remember to take with you when your daughter is dying is your keys. So we then had to break into our house, climbing a ladder through an upstairs window. The first official to come and see us was a policeman, because under British law, if a child dies suddenly, the police are called in automatically to investigate. From that ghastly experience, I learned 2 things, and Emily's great legacy to me was that I am not frightened of death. I'm terrified of snakes, and I'm very frightened of mice. But death, for me, has no fear. When you've seen your own daughter's body, you are no longer frightened of death. My great hero, Marie Curie, said, and it's my favourite quotation, "Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. The more we understand, the less we fear." I actually have that written on the wall of my office in 1 foot high letters, because for me it says everything about death. Because the next thing I learned about death is that people cross the street when they see you coming towards them, even your closest friends. Death is something we're very embarrassed of. When we're born, there are only 3 things in life that we all do, or should do. One is that we're born. The second is that we pay taxes, and the third is that we die. When we're born, we celebrate. We take photographs. Our friends congratulate us. The care is immaculate. It's very important that the mother and the baby are well cared for. And yet when we die, there's so little. It's so strange. And that's what I want to just spend a few minutes talking to you about this morning. I'm not going to talk about Mexico. I'm going to talk about the work that I'm doing currently. And I leave for you to take from it how you think it applies to our own society. So if you feel I'm being critical, I'm not, because I don't know very much about what happens in end-of-life care in Mexico. So you may recognize in what I say things that are good here, and you may recognize things that you think should be better. And that's what I want to try and help you with. I have a passion. My passion is quite simply that a responsible society is best judged by the care and support it provides in allowing people a pain-free, dignified death. In my view, a society that does not support people at the end of their lives cannot call itself a responsible society. So I brought together in December of last year who I believe are the 20 leading experts in the world on end-of-life care under my leadership. I'm pleased to say that two of them are here today, Liliana de Lima and Felicia. And what we've set out to do, the 20 of us, is to think through what would be the 5 simple steps that a nation can take to ensure that it can proudly call itself a responsible society. I have mixed feelings about academic research, even though I'm now a professor at Imperial College London, and I have mixed feelings sometimes about policy papers, because what I have a passion for is practical answers. If there's a problem, I want to know what the 5 simple ways are to solve the problem. End-of-life care is not complicated. It just needs to be acted on. And now if I move forward to the next slide, anything may happen. So this is another map of the world. Felicia showed you one earlier on. And what this shows you, this is not about the availability of opioids. Opioids are very important, but end-of-life care is far more than just pain management. And I know others will talk about this later on. Basically, in a nutshell, if you want to die with access to good palliative care, move quickly to a country that is coloured green. Under no circumstances live in a country that is red. And if you live in an orange country, you might want to be thinking about how you can improve what you're already doing. And according to this fine document, Mexico is orange. By the way, I feel so sorry for Greenland. I don't know if there are any people in Greenland, but it's red. So the polar bears are obviously having a pretty rough time of it at the end of their lives. So that's the first thing to say. That's where the world is at the moment, and it's basically great inequity. Remember too a word that Felicia used in her very moving description of her own experiences of pain and life care. Pain is torture. The fact is, in this world, 3 million people, 3 million every year, die in unnecessary pain. Can you imagine if 3 million people died in plane crashes every year? We'd all sit back and say, well, there's not very much we can do about it. Or if 3 million people died in tsunamis every year, would we take climate control more seriously? But every year, 3 million people die in unnecessary pain, and the world does nothing about it. So this is a real challenge for us all, and something I believe we should all be deeply ashamed of as a global society. This is something else that's deeply troubling, I think, to me and should be to you. This graph shows very simply, on the left-hand side, 1990, you can see worldwide opioid consumption. And the red line is lower and middle income countries. And I'm afraid Mexico sits on the red line as far as opium consumption is concerned. And what you can see is the problem is getting worse. It's not getting better. The green countries are consuming more and more opioids, and the pain relief is more and more available to them. But there's very, very little happening on this red line, and that's something we need to deal with really urgently. So what are the problems? The basic problems my colleagues and I have identified are these. The first is the opioid availability divide, which that last slide shows, the availability of essential medicines. The second is policy. Some governments simply do not recognise palliative care as a human right or prioritise end-of-life care. The third is cultural. I told you about my friends crossing the road. Death is a taboo subject. We don't like talking about it. We don't feel comfortable with it. In the 19th century, in Europe, people celebrated death. In the 18th and 17th centuries in Europe, when my own child died, I started reading the diaries of 18th century women. I'm a historian, it's rather odd. But they would literally say in the diary, "In the morning, Isabella, my beloved daughter, died." And then they go on in the afternoon to say what they cooked their husbands for dinner. It was just part of life, and we've lost that. We're frightened of dealing with death. Fourthly, there is a terrible lack of data. It's very difficult to improve performance if you don't know how you're performing right now. And Mexico is no exception to this, but this is a problem throughout the world. In Britain, we invest 0.4% in researching better care for those who die of cancer, compared to the 99.6% we spend on people to try and kill cancer research. But the reality, as many of you know, is that for pancreatic cancer and lung cancer in particular, no progress has been made since the 1940s. And it is highly likely, sadly, that people who contract those diseases will die. So little is spent on thinking about how we can improve it. And lastly, trained healthcare professionals. Worldwide, there's a desperate lack of people to provide care. I'm so pleased to see so many nurses in the audience today, and I salute you. In my view, nurses are the backbone of good palliative care. There will never, ever, ever be enough specialists. There will never, ever, ever be enough doctors to deal with the wall of increasing death rates that we're going to see worldwide over the next 40 years. The reason that Uganda is rapidly becoming a green country in terms of end-of-life care, and may soon be one of the world's leading providers of palliative care, is that nurses in Uganda are now prescribing and dispensing oral morphine. I think Mexico will have to move in that direction at some stage. So the second step that I would advise Mexico to take will be to produce an end-of-life care strategy. The document on the left is one I'm very proud of and helped to write. And I was appointed by the government after it was written in 2007. This is the end-of-life care strategy for England. And I now hold the government to account as an independent chairman. Every year I review how England has done in terms of the task it set itself to create a holistic end-of-life care strategy. And this wheel you see on the right has within it the key components of good end-of-life care. And at the heart of it is that end-of-life care should be a human right that supports the individual and the family. It is not to be feared or ignored. That it allows people to live and die in dignity. That it neither hastens or postpones death and avoids all unnecessary suffering. But you'll see around it in English, for which my apologies, this is something we all have to take on. We can't just complain to a government when it doesn't deliver it. This is all of our responsibility. Individuals, charities, volunteers, families, carers. We all have to be part of this. But we need a strategy that overarches it. So my very specific recommendation to you here is that Mexico must, you don't have an option, Mexico must produce now an end-of-life care strategy for the nation. And since I'm not very shy, I would like to even go further than that and recommend that perhaps the ministers and others might wish to consider asking Felicia to write that strategy, supported by the Mexican Health Foundation, to enable her to do that. And modestly, I offer you the knowledge that I have gained. And knowledge means the mistakes I've made, as well as the good things I've done, to produce a strategy for end-of-life care in England, which has immodestly transformed the equity of end-of-life care across the country. So that's my second recommendation. My third is to encourage in Mexico people to talk about death and dying. There's some pretty strange things going on in the world. The Americans are always a bit odd. No disrespect to the Americans. But my favourite thing that's being done at the moment is let's have dinner and talk about death. This is the one at the top. This is a dinner party I don't terribly want to go to. But these parties have now started in the United States because it's a place that people feel comfortable. I am slightly eccentric, and I introduced into the hospice movement in England something called coffin cake parties. How does that translate? Is that okay? Coffin cake, yeah? And this was really for patients who had recently been diagnosed as terminally ill. And we had cakes made in the shape of coffins and brought in to sessions. And you could hear the silence in the room, and then they started laughing. And everyone thought it was incredibly funny. By the way, the cake was delicious too. But it just meant that everyone started talking about it and what sort of cocktail they would like. And it was a very easy way of people coming to terms with death. So here, when we publish our documents in December, we'll be able to give you links to all of these amazing initiatives that are going on. The other thing I got, the main retailer in the United Kingdom is Tesco's. I got Tesco's to put on every single lorry they have, which is tens of thousands of them, the phrase, "I want the choice to die in my own home." And the key was to get the word die onto the roads of Britain. And it had an enormous impact. My fourth recommendation to Mexico is to learn from others. And you will meet in a moment the wonderful Liliana, and she will tell you exactly how you can do that. So I'm not going to. But simply to say, lots of us have made mistakes along this journey. Learn from our mistakes and talk to us about how we can help. A pointer? I've got a pointer. Thank you. The fourth is using technology. Most people in Mexico have a mobile telephone. And it is a fact that the countries that have historically had less good telecommunications are actually far advanced to those who've had good landline telecommunications for a long time in the use of mobile telephony. There's a huge amount that you can do to allow patients and families to support their own end-of-life care through phoning in or texting in symptom management. And I would encourage you to look at this whole area. You're uniquely well placed to benefit from it. And finally, which has already been referred to, you've got to train more people. And I would encourage you to look at e-learning here, as well as face-to-face learning, because you haven't got time to create a new generation of trained clinicians. That will take you 20 years. The reality is, between now and next September, another 1.5 million Mexicans will die, surrounded by their immediate family. That means that 5 to 6 million people here in Mexico, in the next 12 months, will experience death at first hand. And as I always say to governments, they all vote. And the better the end-of-life care, the better the end-of-life care they see, and the improvements in end-of-life care they see, the better the society will be. So again, the top one here is a British initiative where we've now got an online e-learning system in palliative care, which we're extremely proud of. And it is what we call holistic training. So it's as much about opioids as it is about bereavement support. And then the Lian Collaborative. The Lians are a Chinese family based in Singapore. Again, online training. I just come back from Myanmar, Burma, and the Lian Collaborative is now being used in Myanmar to do online training for healthcare professionals in that country. A very challenged country. So that's it. This is my remarkable team. And I finish with the words team. Team is crucial in end-of-life care, and it needs to be a unified team. Slightly chiefly, if I may, I know there are a number of palliative care associations here in Mexico. One of the things I'm very proud of having achieved, it took me 10 years to get there, but was to get all the associations in Britain to combine so that we only had one with a common purpose to achieve a common aim, which is to improve end-of-life care for the British citizen, and in your case, the Mexican citizen. And the final point on team, I hope you thrash Panama tonight. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Sir Thomas Hughes, por el excelente mensaje y sobre todo por las recomendaciones de la Fundación Nacional Mexicana.